Good evening, everybody. How are you? It's Tuesday the 29th. We're coming to the end of this year, finally. Hallelujah. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and happy Hanukkah and happy holidays so far. I hope everybody's well. Tonight, we have an awesome show. I'm really excited about our guest tonight. He's not only an awesome guy, but he is one of my all-time favorites in the comic industry, and I get to talk to him, so how awesome is that? So I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm Phil Russert, this Creatorcon Q&A. And before we get started, I have my usual shout-outs that I'll give before we bring our guest on. Bradney, how are you? Dante, what's going on? Yes, she made me shave. Actually, I had to shave. I had to look a little presentable for Bob tonight. So just to remind you, we got the Nerd Byword with Chris and Dave. That is a podcast that is on all the podcast stations that you could possibly find. Every Monday, they release their new episode, and you can find their latest episode. It was out since yesterday, so please go check it out. Comics Cast with Joe Tolliver and Gerald Motos. They have a 1 p.m. Sunday show. Go check that out. They're awesome on the indie scene. If you want to see the up-and-coming greats and the great books that are coming out, go check them out. Android's Amazing Podcast. That's Hunter and James. Up-to-date news every week with them about what's going on in the comic world. You got the Bit and Apple with Rafael Tavares Jr., which I'm very friendly with them. They helped me with my start meeting at Delso, so that was great. It Came from the Radio with Mark Torres. He is your host with his crew. They are an awesome online show. For your comic needs, you've got Mad Titan _comics on Instagram and Eric Gunderson, who is the owner and operator on Facebook. Andy Lee, the wonderful human being that does all of my promo graphics, www.lesdudis.com, LESDUDIS.com. It's Andy Lee, everything pop culture, everything geek culture. He does convention reviews and collectible reviews, etc. So go check him out. He's also a foodie and has a foodie channel. Art by Kike, which is the page on Instagram for Enrique Lopez, every Monday night at 8 p.m. A new episode of Inking with Kike. Check that out. And finally, nsclivetv.com. It's the comic book network created for geeks by geeks, featuring live sales, comic shops, creators, podcasts, cosplay, news, and interviews. That's nsclive.com. Now that we got that all out of the way, I'm excited because tonight we have one of the best in the business, in my opinion. He's always been a favorite, and he's a wonderful person to talk to. You mostly know him as co-creator of the New Mutants, but he's worked on the Hulk and Superman and Spiderman. He was part of the Kraven's Last Hunt. I mean, he's done so much, and he's been so, all over the comic industry as an inker, as a penciler. He's on a lot of my jams. He is truly a legend in the industry. A pleasure to speak to. I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Bob McLeod.
Hello,
hey,
Phil.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. We have some people saying hello. John Ottinger, how are you, buddy? Dante, Bradney, so Diver Down. They're all here to say hello.
Hello. Thanks for coming.
So, we were talking a bit backstage. I just have to say, you really are one of my favorites. Not just because of your body of work, but just every time I see you at a convention, conversing with you is always a pleasure. Just talking to you is fun.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for being on today, but also thank you for everything you've contributed to the comic world. I really appreciate that. We all do. So if you could, let's get right down to the questions. You started, I think it was like 1973, right?
It was more like 74. I think I made the trip I'm from Tampa, Florida. I made the trip up to New York to try to start some kind of a career in the summer of 73, possibly. Got nowhere, just nowhere. But probably didn't actually start getting published work until the winter of 74, so January or February, somewhere around there.
And I mean, how was it? You were working for Crazy Magazine, right, at the time? I mean, you were one of the crusty bunkers with Continuity Studios.
Actually, my first work, I started in the production department at Marvel Comics on the recommendation of Neil Adams. I had gotten a room with Pat Broderick. He was my roommate. We're both from Tampa and just happened to meet trying to get started at the same time in 74, 73. We met up in New York at the Comic-Con and became roommates. And Pat kept telling me I had to meet Neil Adams. He had gotten into at the time, DC had an apprenticeship program. And Pat had gotten into that. I tried, didn't make it. And so Pat met Neil through that. And he kept telling me, oh, you gotta meet Neil Adams. And I was thinking, well, Neil's just another comic book artist. What's he going to do for me? So I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. I had come out of a background of reading Mad Magazine rather than comics. And my whole dream was to work for Mad Magazine and basically be more Drucker, do the movie satires and TV satires. I never planned on a career in comics at all. Never occurred to me, really. I mean, I always enjoyed comics. I read comics as a kid. But during the whole Marvel explosion of the 60s, I was reading Mad Magazine. So I didn't know who Jack Kirby was or John Romita or Neil Adams or any of those guys until I tried to get in the business. I started hearing about these people and looking at their work and meeting some of them. So anyway, I finally met Neil, went up to the Continuity studio and met Neil and showed him my samples. And he just said, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? And I said, anything that pays. Because I had sold my car to finance my trip up to New York. And I was down to like my last $10. I was going to call my parents and get bus fare back to Tampa because I just wasn't getting anywhere. And Neil phoned Marvel, the production manager, John Verporten at the time, and said, I got a guy here, some potential as an artist, but a lot of potential as a letterer. And do you need anybody in production? And so they hired me in the production department at Marvel to do lettering corrections.
I didn't know it was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, some of my first work was actually taping the page numbers onto the original art.
Really?
So I figure I pretty much started at the bottom, worked my way up.
How mind-numbing was that?
Pretty mind-numbing. But I was just excited to be getting paid to be in the Marvel office. Back then it was owned by Cadence Industries, and it was a small operation, and a lot of the people were right there. I mean, Stan's office was right down the hall. I could go in and say boo to Stan, and John Romita was almost right next to me. It was amazing. Mike Esposito was inking right there in the office with Frank Giacoia.
Wow.
I was sitting 3 feet from them at my little desk doing my lettering corrections. It was just awesome. To be in the Marvel office.
Now, you had said that you weren't into comics and things like that, so you didn't have that awe feeling, I guess, when you were around these people. Do you think that was good? Do you think it was good that you didn't have that fanboy going on so that you could focus on getting the job done? Or
yeah, definitely. I was not a fanboy. John Romita was, basically nobody to me except another artist.
Right now, you have comic fans going.
Yeah, I mean, if I had been a fanboy, it would have been so intimidating. But as it was, I don't know. I mean, I knew it was a big deal to be working at Marvel, obviously, but I wasn't. I was just still trying to get a job doing some artwork, not just lettering corrections. So I was kind of a little frustrated that it had been so. And was being so difficult. I was like a lot of fans. I thought, well, how hard can comics be? I'll just go in and show them I can draw, and I'll be getting a lot of work. I had no clue how much I had to learn.
The confidence of youth.
Yeah, I was so overconfident. Before I met Neil, I went up to DC trying to get in and showed my samples to Joe Orlando, who was the art director at DC at the time. I had no idea who Joe Orlando was, except that he was the art director, and showed him my stuff. And he said, well, you put a lot of work into these. you know, hand lettered the title and everything. And unfortunately, you really need to go back to school and learn how to draw. And I said, what? Because, you know, my whole life, everybody's telling me how well I could draw. You know, all my friends blown away by how well I could draw. And then I get to New York and everybody draws better than I do. You know, I didn't know anything. And here he is telling me I need to go back to school and learn how to draw. And he did a little example on my sketchbook of using cylinders for the arms and legs and showing me how to do foreshortening and what have you. And I mean, I knew I could draw, so I just had to figure out what was I not doing that he could see so easily, you know. Right. And so I just went back to my room. I had a room at the YMCA because that was the cheapest place to stay in New York at the time. Something like $7 a night or something. And I got some comics and I started looking at the comics, trying to figure out, well, what are these guys doing that I'm not doing? And I just did sample pages, kept doing new sample pages. And the great thing about that job in the production department of Marvel is I could meet all the editors and show them my samples. Right. So it was a great way to learn and to meet everybody and get started.
So at that point, you had already had a formal education, though, right? You know,
I went a year to college, majoring in visual design at Auburn University, and just didn't fit in at Auburn. It wasn't the right place for me. I didn't feel like I was learning. Well, for one, they were actually discouraging me from doing any kind of cartooning. They said, you'll never get anywhere as a cartoonist. You need to be doing serious art. And since I was 5 years old, my goal was just to be a cartoonist. I like cartoons. I like comic drawing, humorous drawing. Wasn't interested in being a fine art painter. So I quit after a year at Auburn and went to the artist into Fort Lauderdale. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know anything about the schools up north. All I knew was Florida. So I went to this art institute and quit there after a year because that was mainly teaching you how to do commercial products, you know, like drawing fingernail polish bottles.
Right. So there's no passion in that.
I just wasn't learning cartooning, which is what I wanted to do. So I figured, well, heck, I'm just going to have to teach myself. So that's when I decided I was going to go to New York and get started trying to do. I was working at a grocery store, stocking the shelves, and one of the other stock guys was a huge Marvel Comics fan. And when he found out I could draw, he said, "Oh, you got to work for Marvel Comics." And I said, "Oh, yeah?" Yeah, I'm like, "You got to be working for Marvel, definitely." So that's when I decided I'd go give comics a shot, you know, thinking I would just do it temporarily as like a stepping stone to maybe then move on to Mad Magazine, or maybe get my own newspaper comic strip, or I don't know, work for Walt Disney. I don't know. I never really intended to stay in comics.
So, I mean, I want to start asking, get into more questions myself. But before we started the live, I told you there was a fan that was hoping to make the show because he had some family obligations, and you know, he did a storyboard animation for the Iron Giant. So he's here and he has a question for you. So I just want to put it up and ask it for him. This is Steve Garcia. He's a big fan of yours. He said, "Big fan of your work, sir. New Mutants work really impacted me when I was a 12-year-old kid. I really connected to them all because they felt like kids, way more so than even the original X-Men did. The differing and even clashing personalities. How did you settle on their personalities? And who is your favorite one as a character to draw? Thank you, sir."
Well, first I want to say how much I enjoyed the Iron Giant. You know, I watch not all of the superhero movies, but I watch a lot of them. And I think the animated superhero movies are the best. The Incredibles, Iron Giant. I just think it works better in animation than with live action, for me anyway. But with the New Mutants, the personalities, I don't know how. I mean, when I first was brought on board, Chris Claremont had already come up with some characters and their names, and he needed somebody to visualize them, and he wasn't sure which ones he was going to use, and it was still kind of ambiguous at the time. Like, was Sunspot going to be big when he used his powers, like the Hulk, or was he going to stay little?
See,
Was
I love stuff
Cannonball?
like I loved that he just stayed his size. He was just all black with the spots. He was still vulnerable. He
Yeah,
wasn't the typical archetype of the strong guy back then, but he was strong. So I loved that.
yeah, good, good. Because that was, we were trying to decide how to handle him, and with Cannonball, was Cannonball going to be a beefy, muscular guy, or what? It was kind of my idea to make him kind of awkward and
Lanky.
rocky looking, and I don't know where I got that picture in my head of what a coal miner might look like, because I'd never met a coal miner. All I know is what I'd seen in the movies. But so we were nailing down stuff like how their looks might affect their personalities. Chris had some powers in mind, but even those, uh, changed slightly as we were developing them. So he and I just talked on the phone, and I showed him some sketches, and we just worked it out. I think I'm not sure why they hired me to do the New Mutants. I did a couple issues, fill-in issues on the X-Men. Maybe Paul Smith had been the artist before me. I don't
Yeah.
remember. And they liked what I did on those couple fill-in issues of the X-Men, and they offered me the X-Men. They needed a penciler for the X-Men, and I said, great, because I really wanted to draw the X-Men. That seemed like a really fun job. Of all the books that I might get offered, and it's, oh yeah, and then we're going to be doing a spin-off of the X-Men. We haven't got a title yet, but you could be co-creator on that instead if you'd rather. And that was a really tough choice because I wanted to draw the X-Men, and I didn't know who these other characters were, or if that book was going to go anywhere.
Right.
It could have been a disaster. It might have been canceled after a couple issues. But then again, I thought, well, how often am I going to have a chance to be a co-creator on a new series tied to the X-Men? So
Right.
it's kind of too good to pass up, and I figured, well, I'll just work on the X-Men next year. I didn't. I was, like I said, I was overconfident in the beginning. But obviously, I'm glad I decided on the New Mutants, and we just kind of developed those characters. I like, and I credit it to my love of Mort Drucker's characters. I like drawing people, all different kinds of people, not just superheroes. So many artists get into this business because they want to draw Batman or Spiderman, and I
Right.
just like drawing figures. So I was able to draw kids, younger kids, as well as adults, because I'd seen how Mort Drucker drew all these various types of people. And at the time, there weren't that many comic artists that were very good at drawing younger kids. They tend to just look like small adults.
Yeah.
So I think they appreciated that I could draw Kitty Pryde, that I could draw a younger person, and maybe that's why they thought I could handle this new book. I don't know.
See, to me, part of the charm of New Mutants was that you captured those more realistic body types. I mean, Cannonball was this tall, lanky hick, and
Right.
Roberto didn't grow big. He was just a kid. He absorbed the energy, and he was still. They looked like teens. So, like, to get to what Steve said, yeah, it was relatable, and you didn't have that at that point. Like you said, they just look like smaller adults. But the fact that you went against all the body types of superheroes, they weren't massive, they weren't impressive, they were just people made it even more believable too with what you were trying to achieve with it. So
exactly. Well, that's the whole idea. I didn't want them to look like Wonder Woman and Superman. I wanted them to look like just any kid that would suddenly find out they had superpowers. So I wanted them to look like average people. Obviously, Danny Moonstar, I wanted her to be pretty, but I didn't give her a real voluptuous figure or anything, or tried to make her, again, the stereotype
sexualized
comic girl, you know. And, you know, I wanted them to just look like average teenagers.
No, please. They're one of my favorites. They go down as one of my favorites. I would have loved for you to stay in the book longer. I'm going to get into everybody in the chat shortly because we have a lot of people saying stuff and asking questions. But just tying into what we're talking about, you've been on record as saying that New Mutants was one of your most frustrating experiences of your career. And this is actually a positive story. But can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, sure, because that was my first regular penciling assignment. I started my career on Crazy doing humor, magazine type stuff. And it was apparent to me that if I wanted to really have a career in the business, I needed to learn how to draw more dramatic comics. But Mike Esposito, actually, in the production department one day said, you know, you could learn to be an inker faster than you can learn to be a penciler. So I said, oh, yeah? Oh, well, that's an idea. So I started doing backgrounds for Mike and Al Milgram and Klaus Janson. And eventually they started offering me ink jobs. And I was inking on the Kung Fu magazines, you know, the black and white magazines. And then I finally started inking on the color comics. So my inking career kind of took off, but they weren't letting me pencil yet because my figures were a little stiff. I didn't really know storytelling. You know, there's a lot to learn to draw dramatic comics. And I had never studied that stuff because I wanted to work for Mad and just draw funny stuff, you know. So I had a lot of studying and catching up to do. So I didn't start penciling until 5 years later. 1979 was my first superhero penciling job on Spiderman Team Up. And I had penciled a handful of other fill-in jobs, so it was a couple X-Men jobs. And then they offered me this regular series, and it was going to be a regular comic book, and I was going to have there was no deadline, so I was going to have time to make it my very best work. And I was really excited about, you know, finally doing something the very best I could do. And then they said, oh, wait, we're starting up a graphic novel line, and they did a project for the graphic novels, and we're going to make the New Mutants into a graphic novel. And I said, oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. But then the graphic novels were on a different schedule than the comics. And suddenly, instead of no deadline, I was actually behind schedule because they wanted it in the next installment, the next graphic novel. So I had to start rushing to finish it. And instead of it being 20 pages, it was like 50 pages. And then they were going to give the inking to another artist to meet the deadline. And I said, oh, wait. This is a graphic novel, a new series. I got to ink this myself. And so, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, different ways to look at it, I was getting married at the time. And so I just happened to get married and go on my honeymoon. And they said, well, if you want to ink this yourself, you got to start turning in pages. So I actually had to ink during my honeymoon to get the graphic novel done. And then as soon as I got back and got to work, got the graphic novel finished, which I believe me, I inked as fast as I could move the pen. No time to think. I was just inking as fast as I could go. And then bang, onto the first issue. And then bang, on the second issue. And it was just rush. And I was still learning how to pencil, so I needed to think, well, how am I going to pose their arms and legs? What camera angle am I going to use? What am I going to put in the background? There's all these things to think about that I had never thought about before, and I was still puzzling all that stuff out, and yet having to crank out pages. And then, I gave them a list of 10 inkers that might want to ink the series, and I could only come up with 9 people that I thought were inkers that I'd want to work with. And then I wanted to round it off to 10 people, make it an even 10. And I came up with this guy, Mike Gustovich, who had been working on the Justice League. What was it? Justice Machine, for some small company. And so I threw his name on there. And of course, he's the one that they picked. Everybody else was probably too busy. I mean, why else would they turn down inking on a new project like this?
Right.
But anyway, so Mike became my inker, and he was kind of inexperienced. I was inexperienced. I was giving him really rushed pencils, and he was doing some very nice work for what he could do and what I was giving him. But it didn't look like the way I would ink it, because right. I had become one of the top inkers at that time, and I knew how I wanted everything to look.
And these are your babies.
Yeah. And I mean, inking was important to me. A lot of pencilers are really into the storytelling and they don't care that much about the inking. But because I was up to that point mainly an inker, it was really important to me. And as much as Mike was doing, it just wasn't looking the way I wanted it to look. And so I was frustrated with the finished look. I was frustrated with having to be rushed all the time. They were doing things like bringing Team America into the series, which, I didn't want to be drawing Team America motorcycles and all that stuff. And I don't know, I just wasn't having a good time on the book. And I just decided that I wanted to work on something where I could slow down and really put some thought into it and try to make the art look better.
Well, if it's any consolation, I have 3 of those graphic novels. I probably have like 3 or 4 copies of number 1, issues 1 through 10. Steve's a maniac. He has like 100 issue number 1s, and he has like 30 of each issue up to number 10. So I'm sorry that your honeymoon was interrupted and everything, but your work impacted a lot of people. So at least there's that.
Yeah, and I'm still married. I've been married now for like 35 years, so it worked out.
Well, if you were doing pages on your honeymoon and she's still with you, she is a keeper.
She is. Yeah, great.
So just to get to a few people in the chat, Raphael just said, "Go Bob." Mike Igo, I have a Superman sketch of Bob's from the 90s I would share here for people to see, but it doesn't allow pictures to be grabbed here. Well, Mike, if you send it to me in Messenger, I could probably put it up on screen if everybody wants to see it. Dell said hello. Dante said that Pat and his missus are really sweet and kind people.
Yeah. Pat
Diver Down said, okay, and Diver Down said Neil is rad as well. Keith Williams says hello. Sorry, just getting through a lot of these because I've been, I've made them wait long enough, and the dam is busting. There's a ton of comments here. Mike James said that he's liking and sharing this, and he's watching, and thank you for all you have done. Loved meeting you in Dallas and getting the New Mutants print. Diver Down said it was you're amazing. Heather Ellen says hello. My mother's on. She says hello.
What does your mother think about comic books?
Actually, she's pretty cool about them. She doesn't really read them, but she might read 1 or 2 once in a blue moon. And she loves art, though. She supports art, and she loves what I'm doing in the industry, and she loves the people that I meet. So yeah, she's pretty cool. And my wife is an artist herself. So
how nice.
Yeah, we're good. And my daughters at my last show, they both had They had a table at Artist Alley with all the big guys. Adam Kubert was there, Jim Steranko, and there's my 2 little girls sitting there at a table.
That's
and
great.
They made money. They made money too.
That's great.
Dell wanted to ask, what was your favorite project that you worked on?
Oh, you know, that's so tough because I was fortunate enough to work on a lot of great stuff. I've had a really nice career, and I get this question a lot. It's really hard because I like different things for different reasons. You know, when I was a kid, the main comic book I read was the whole Superman family. I would read about Crypto the Superdog and Lois Lane comics and Jimmy Olsen comics and all that stuff. And then my sister would buy the Archie comics and we'd swap off, and then I'd read the Archies and she'd read my Superman. And I didn't really go too much because I didn't have that much money to buy comics. I didn't go beyond the Superman stuff too much. So then when I got a chance in my career to actually draw Superman, pencil Superman, it was kind of like an honor. I enjoyed the whole ensemble of the Superman books, you know, drawing all the secondary characters, not just Superman, which they, at least during the time I was on the book, they made a big point of bringing in all those different characters into the storyline. So that was one of the best times of my career. But, you know, I'm basically at heart a humor artist, and my early work on Crazy Magazine on the Teen Hulk stuff was some of the work that I enjoyed the most.
You just posted that recently too.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun stuff. You know, it's a stupid character, and it was just little 4-page installments, but I had a lot of fun with it.
Very cool. Keith wanted to say he met you a couple of times at the Cincinnati Comic Expo, and you were so nice, and you did a small head pick of Wolverine for him.
Nice. I'm glad he liked it. Thanks.
Bill Field loves your New Mutants run. I wanted you to be on that book so much longer. I have to tell you. I
know. Well, of course, in retrospect, I should have stayed on it longer. I wish I had. But, you know, people I was working with, Chris and Louise, could tell you I was miserable at the time.
Yeah.
I remember telling Louise how miserable I was, and she said, "Oh, this biggest mistake of your career to leave this book. You should stay on this book." And I just couldn't do it. I had to go.
So you just answered Keith's next question. So let me ask you. You and I have talked about this briefly, and I won't, you know, put you too much pressure about where the industry is now, where books are now, things like that, the celebrity status. I would love, I mean, I don't, but my question is going to be if you'd want to. I would love for them to go back and do, even if it was a limited series, just a retro New Mutants storyline, 12-issue mini run or whatever, maxi series, whatever the hell you want to call it, and have you pencil and ink it. Would you do it?
Well, number one, it's not going to happen.
I know, but would you do it if we start a hashtag?
I mean, honestly, Phil, at this point, I spent over 40 years drawing comics, and even though when I was younger, I had zero interest in painting, now that I'm older, I do have an interest in painting, and I'd actually like to take some time to do some paintings, and not superhero paintings, you know, just landscapes or still lifes or portraits or whatever. I've done, like, you know, just a half dozen paintings in my life, maybe 6 or 8 paintings. So I'd like to be doing some painting rather than more comics. As much as I love the idea of going back and doing the New Mutants again. But working with all those tiny little details and those little tiny panels, I'd rather work on something bigger.
Okay. Well, you know what? As a fan, I'd be disappointed, but you have to follow what makes you happy, and I would love to. I look forward to seeing your paintings, because that would be beautiful to see. Whether it's, you know, landscapes or, you know, just natural, you know, figure painting of people in a park or whatever, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks. You know, as an artist, you don't want to just keep repeating yourself,
right?
And I feel like I've done the New Mutants, and I'd rather do something new instead of trying to go back and redo older stuff. I understand the appeal of that to the fans, and it appeals to me, to the fan and me, but I just rather move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, after all these years of doing sequential art and everything, you want to expand your horizons. That's totally understandable. Um, Steve said that he was glad that I'm sorry that Danny Moonstar is one of his favorites. It was his first comic book crush. He was 12. Um,
Well, Danny was only 14, I think.
yeah, well, there you go. And Raphael said he liked that she didn't make her voluptuous body type. She was Native American. It was so nice to see different and more regular teens. And that was the other thing that was great. That obviously it started with Cockrum back, with Giant Size X-Men, but you guys continued the tradition of representing, other demographics of people that you didn't really see in comics. But it was in a good way. It wasn't in a shoving anything down your throat kind of way. It was just, hey, let's explore this. There are other people in the world. Why not have a mutant like this? And it really introduced that to people, which I thought was great. It also brings on new readers of different demographics. But the book just resonated with everybody who couldn't connect to that book, whether it was because of the youth or the different ethnicities. There was just so many ways to connect to that, the innocence of their youth, and that portrayed a lot in that book, was how innocent they really were being thrown into these situations, which was awesome.
I got to give all the credit to Chris Claremont for that. He was wonderful at doing that, and both of us wanted to do, and Louise as well, the editor, wanted us to be doing multicultural characters and bringing more characters like that into the Marvel Universe. And the whole idea moving forward was to keep adding new mutants as we went along, different ethnicities and whatever. So it was great. I really liked that we were doing that. Like you say, Cockrum had started that ball rolling, and we were still a little bit ahead of the curve. There weren't that many comics doing that type of thing up until then. So I'm kind of proud that we, moved that forward a little bit and did the little bit that we did. I can't, I've met people from North Carolina who it meant so much to them to have Cannonball be from North Carolina. It never occurred to me at the time that anybody would care about that, but a lot of people cared a lot about it. And Danny being a Native American, imagine being a Native American kid and there's no representation in comics except in a negative way, maybe.
Thunderbird, who they killed off after 4 issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
because he was Wolverine light.
Yeah. Yeah. So, these things are important to people. Right now, there's a whole big Latino population in the country. Never mind other countries. I mean, we need to be getting all kinds of different people into comics. So I think it's a good thing that we're getting gay characters and women in the costumes of some of the male characters and all these different changes that a lot of people criticize in the business. I think it's good to have more variety.
Well, for me personally, I like variety and diversity as long as the story is about the story, not about pushing the diversity. And you guys did that. You didn't push the diversity. It was just a natural progression that had to be done, and it was still for the sake of writing the story. So as long as somebody writes a story for the sake of writing a story, I'm all for it. It's just when they try to make it about that or they push that I think starts to stretch boundaries for people. That they're like, all right, is this entertainment now or is this soapbox preaching? And you guys were wonderful at just telling a good story that happened to help represent Native Americans and Latino people and everything. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, and again, Chris deserves a lot of credit for that. He knows how to do it without being heavy-handed about it and without preaching it. Making it just a natural part of the story.
And how was your collaboration with Chris? I know you guys still talk today. I mean, he's on your posts a lot. I can never reach him. I can never reach him. And when I message his wife, I don't get a response. I can never reach him.
He's a busy guy. Yeah, he has so many fans. I can understand that he is approachable. You know, he'll talk to you all day long at a con.
Yeah, I
And,
always get him at a con, and he says he wants to do my show, and we talk. But then he goes, talk to my wife, and that's where it all
yeah,
drops out.
yeah, Chris is a good guy. We get along fine. He, in the beginning, again, it goes back to me being starting out my penciling career. He would give me these plots that were so full of all this stuff. There was no way I could jam them into a 22-page comic. So I had to learn how to edit his plots to make them fit into the comic. And I told him, you know, I got to cut this out, Chris. I can't. There's no room for this scene. And he said, "Oh, that's okay. I don't mind. Do what you need to do. I'd rather give you too much than too little."
Okay,
You know,
good.
so that was great. He's always been great to work with. Never had a problem. Um, you know, his writing style has a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of balloons to read in his comic. My own style would be much more pared down because I'm an artist. I want to see pictures.
Right.
You know, I don't want to be panels of just word balloons. So I would do fewer, more sparse scripting than he does. But you know, he's the writer. I'm the artist. So that's not my domain.
Have you ever thought of writing anything for yourself?
Yeah. I wrote a Red Sonja story that I sold to Marvel, but they never published it. They ended up changing. I just happened to sell it to them at the time when they were revamping Red Sonja, and they wanted a different approach to her. I wrote that. I've written. Well, I wrote my superhero ABC alphabet book for kids. But I mean, I'm just so much more interested in the art. I don't want to be spending time writing. I'd rather be drawing. So I've thought about writing a novel or writing a graphic novel or, you know, writing a comic, but I'm just much more interested in drawing.
Nice. Well, believe me, I'd rather you draw anyway. Your writing could be fantastic. I still want to see what you put on a page. Dell asked, how many cons do you try to make to a year, obviously prior to COVID? And do you enjoy engaging with people at cons? Do you dress up for cons or just something casual? You know, I have to say, I have caught you when you are obviously just fatigued and exhausted. I mean, you are downright tired. I remember the last New York con, or was it the one before? You were just commissioned. I think it was the one before. You were commission after commission after commission after commission, and you could just see it on you. You were exhausted,
Yeah.
and you were still one of the nicest guys. You know, you were still taking the time to talk. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you were using that time to just relax and not draw.
No, you know, it's amazing that we're invited these conventions and that people want to meet us and talk to us. I mean, I'm just a person like you and anybody else. You know, there's nothing special about me. So that the fact that these people want to come up and talk to me is so flattering. And it's great. So I'm always happy to talk to people. What fans may not realize about conventions from the artist point of view is, especially let's take New York Con for an example, that's a 4-day show.
Yep.
And it's not an 8-hour a day show. It's more like a 10-hour a day show.
No lunch breaks, no pee breaks.
It's so hard to get to the bathroom. There's a 20-minute line to get into the bathroom. You can't leave your table to go look around the show or to do anything because there's nobody to watch your stuff on your table. It's just really tiring to sit there. I don't want to sit there twiddling my thumbs, so I like drawing. You know, I like doing the sketches when I'm at a show. It keeps me busy, and I'm doing what I like to do. I'm drawing. I'm not real. I mean, my whole life I've been shy. I'm not a real outgoing person that just like Chris just likes to talk. You know, I'm not that much of a talker, so I'm happy to sit there and draw. So it's nice when people come up and say, "Hey, would you draw this for me?" And well, sure.
Well, if you trusted me, if you ever needed, and I'm at a show and you need me to watch your table so you could take a walk around, I would be happy to take care of it. And obviously, you know, it would be on the up and up. I would be with the utmost integrity. You could call on me if you ever needed.
I would trust you. There's a couple people like that, and I appreciate it so much. And I have asked a couple fans before to do that for me, but you know, you're not just going to hang around my table the whole weekend, right? You're going to be going to the whole show and seeing all these other artists. So I might see you once or twice a day.
Well, I'll give you my phone. You text me, say I need you to come here and do it, and I'll run over and do it. I've done that for a few artists. Yeah, you just text Phil. Can you come over here and watch us? And I'll skate right down and help you out.
All right.
Well, I really have no problems.
I'll hold you to that.
I'll probably even sell some stuff for you. You know, like right. Get some prints. Come on, make some money.
Sounds good.
Absolutely. I do understand with cons, you know, people don't realize the social aspect alone is exhausting. I mean, you're interacting with so many different people and looking up and talking and then trying to draw and then looking up and talking and I mean, think about it. I do these shows and after 2 hours, I'm like, all right, I'm tired now. You're doing it for the 10 hours and they're in person. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's very draining. As much as it's nice and you know, lovely to have all these people come up and tell you how much they like your work. It's just draining being on all day, you know. Sure. And so after a show, they always want to have like a drink and draw or an after show party or something, and I just want to go be by myself and relax. You know? So a lot of times I'll just go out to dinner by myself instead of with a bunch of people because I just want to decompress, you know, and have some quiet time.
You got to get some natural music of like waterfalls and birds or something. Put the headphones on and just go out to dinner.
Well, I usually have an audiobook. I like listening to audiobooks, so I'll have my audiobook and my headphones on while I'm eating dinner.
Well, if it gets you through, right? I mean, those 4 days are brutal.
Yeah.
Steve has another question. Mr. McLeod, I don't think you get nearly enough credit for your amazing inks. Your inks over Kerry Gamble on a piece in the Marvel Team Up portfolio blows me away. Do you have a favorite fellow artist to ink, and do you prefer looser pencils to tighter pencils when inking?
Well, Kerry is a lot of fun to ink. I really like his style. I haven't inked that much. A couple covers and a Superman story and maybe pinup or something. I don't know, but he was always a pleasure to ink. My favorite to ink was John Buscema. I mean, I really like, it's fun to ink anybody who draws well. I've inked a lot of people who don't draw well and they're not as much fun. I prefer looser stuff because I can put more of my own style into it. It's so much more interesting and fun to ink looser pencils than tight pencils. So I always really enjoyed John Buscema's breakdowns, which are about as loose as you can get.
Well, that's how we got 10 books done in a month.
Yeah. And so he just gives you the bare bones storytelling, and you put all the lighting and rendering in, fix up the drawing, you know, connect the lines to make it actually be a complete drawing. So he gives you so much more to do, but he gives you this wonderful foundation to build on. So he was always a lot of fun to ink. I've done a lot with Mike Zeck. He's always fun to ink. Like his style. Who else? I mean, there's, like I say, anybody that draws well. I had a good time inking Gene Colan, even though everybody thinks he must be so difficult to ink. I just, I mean, yeah, he's not easy, but nobody's really easy to ink. So I always enjoyed inking Gene stuff.
Have you ever run into an issue where you put your style on someone's pencils and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to just trace"?
Yeah, a couple times, not very often. You know, in this business, at least in the older days, there wasn't a lot of communication between the pencilers and inkers. They would turn in their pencils, and the editor would send them to the inker. Same with me when I penciled something and someone else inked it. I didn't usually have much conversation with them, and they didn't with me. So I would just do my thing, and they either liked it or they didn't. If they liked it, I guess they asked for me again. If they didn't like it, they didn't ask for me again. But I rarely, very rarely heard criticism about my inks. But there were a couple times. One artist I was inking over, he thought I was taking over too much, and pointed out this leg that I had inked. And he said, "That's a Bob McLeod leg. I want my leg there." And I said, "Well, to me, that's just a leg. I'm not trying to make it look necessarily like my legs. I'm just, that's how I think a leg should look." But he didn't want me to do it that way. He wanted me to do it the way he had drawn it. And so I said, okay.
If it's a Bob McLeod leg, is that a leg that can stop traffic? You know, like you pull it out to get the
Well,
pull up your pants leg and you type in?
I don't know. I mean, that's fine. When he told me that, I said, okay, I'll ink it the way you want. I mean, he's the penciler. I'm hired to ink him. So I don't want to deliberately do things that he's not going to like. I would never want to do that. So whenever I would ink somebody, I would do something that I would hope they would like.
Right.
But at the same time, my attitude was always, I just want to make this art look the best as that I can make it look. I don't want to I don't want to ink John Buscema the way John Buscema would ink John Buscema, even though I like his inking a lot, and I like to ink in that style sometimes. I'd rather just see, what else I can do with it.
Right.
So, I mean, I never worried over much about pleasing the penciler. I just worried about trying to do the best work I could do.
Of course. I mean, look, what you put on the page is your resume too. It's your presents what you're doing. By the way, speaking of inkers in the industry, we have another legendary inker here, and he's roasting you. Mr. Joseph Rubenstein said Bob looks like every next door neighbor in a 1960s sitcom.
Yeah, when I got married, my wife thought I looked like John Denver. I could never see that, but other people, Bob Newhart, I don't know. I've got a pretty standard look, especially compared to Joe, who is certainly an individual.
Joe was actually a guest on my show, and he's got that sense of humor that you got to know he's joking with you, because he looks very serious when he tells you that joke, and you better know that he's joking.
Yeah.
We also have a fan. Is it Resse? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm sorry. They said hey, and they wanted to ask, what do you think about the Japanese style of comics?
I've seen some really terrific manga. I think it's amazing what some of the artists have done with it. I see some really crappy manga. I was teaching at the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design for about 10 years. And of course, all the students there were heavily into manga and trying to do manga, and all of it badly. Oh, so badly. And, I tried to get across to them that it doesn't matter what style you're working in, what kind of comics you want to do. There's still certain fundamental things that you want to try to do well. You want to put some backgrounds in that look like what they're supposed to look like. You
Right.
want to have characters that look like they could be alive, and instead of would be painful to be in those bodies. So when it's like regular comics, when something's done well, it's good. It doesn't matter whether it's manga or traditional American comics or whatever.
Cool. Just a couple of things too. Diver Down, he said, "Oh my God, my son Joseph and I had a table at El Paso Comic-Con. Same experience. He killed it, laughed loud. It was amazing." It was an old post, so I don't know what he's referring to. I'm sorry, I got to it late. Richard wanted to ask you, did you ever wind up doing any cartooning or cartoon strips? I mean, obviously you did, the stuff you did with Crazy, but anything since then? Have you gotten back to it, or?
Well, when I was trying to get started, I did one summer. I wrote, penciled, inked, lettered a 36 strips of a comic strip that I was going to hopefully get into the newspapers, of a little private detective called Tom Nosey, and had a good time doing that. It's
That's where your Instagram comes from?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tom Nosey. It's awful stuff. I didn't know what I was doing. I was inking it with a brush because I heard that professional artists use brushes. So I got some little cheap brush at the art store, and doing this awful inking. I didn't know anatomy, so the anatomy, everything about it is pretty awful. It was when I was 19. And so I did all summer 36 strips. That's a lot of work. So I did that, and then I did this alphabet book for kids, superhero ABC, where I made up a different superhero for every letter of the alphabet book, and used a lot of alliteration. Had a good time writing that. So silly superheroes, like Bubble Man, blows big bubbles at bullies, rather than Wolverine type characters.
Well, I hate to tell you, but if you've seen characters like Goldball that's in the X-Men right now, it's not looking so silly these days. There's some really silly comic heroes these days that Marvel is putting out there.
Yeah, I've seen some of it, and I like a lot of it. I kind of feel like some of those people, are getting, I call it getting away with stuff that they wouldn't let me get away with when I was doing comics. You had to make Peter Parker look like John Romita's Peter Parker until Todd McFarlane came along. They were redrawing a lot of Peter Parker heads all the time, no matter who was drawing the book. If it didn't look like the way they wanted it to look, they would redraw the head, even on John Buscema. So I had this cartoon influence, but I had to try to get rid of it to draw the dramatic comics for Marvel and DC. And then about the time I perfected getting rid of it and doing dramatic stuff, and this new generation of artists come in doing cartoons and instead of the more dramatic style. So that's great. It's nice that it came to that, but I kind of feel like my timing was off there.
Yeah, you were ahead of your time. How's that sound?
Yeah, so I don't know. I haven't tried to do a whole lot of cartooning because I was just so busy doing comics for Marvel and DC. I was full-time job for 40 years doing, and then I did the Phantom over for the Swedish publisher. Really serious stuff, dramatic. So I was just too busy to do cartoons.
Do you still have a passion for it, or are you really just at the painting at this point?
No, I still like doing comics and cartooning. At this point, I'm going to be 70 this year. And, most people retire at 65. And I'm not retiring, but I don't want to just be drawing all the time, even though I still like to draw. I like to go out and ride my bike. For a long time, I was playing a lot of tennis, but now my back is giving me trouble, so I can't play tennis. But I just don't want to be sitting at the drawing table all the time. So, there's other things in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, you want to balance it out better than being in the studio all day.
Yeah.
Randy Funk. Hi, Phil. Bob, big fan for a long time. You did a Captain America sketch on an Avengers cover jam for me a couple of years back. Hey, Randy, how are you? Yeah, Randy's like me. He likes his jam pieces. I've had you on. I have like 19 jam pieces, and you're on at least half of them. Yeah, so I always get an amazing piece from you on there.
It's always fun to do jams because you look at what the other artists have done, and it's always interesting. Everybody has their own style and way of thinking of what to put how to handle a character or what to put into a jam. So it's always interesting to see.
Robert said that you're on his want list for commissions. So, Robert, man, next time we have a New York con, everything's back to normal, and Bob's there, meet up with me in Artist Alley because I'll be in line first. But you can get behind me. I'll save you a spot.
Yeah, you really have to catch me at a convention because I'm not doing as many commissions anymore, and I've got a list already of people that want commissions.
Right.
So it's just hard for me to take on anybody else because there's these other people have been waiting sometimes 2 or 3 years to have me do something for them. And I was going to so many shows the last couple of years that I didn't have time for commissions. And so now with COVID, I'm doing some more commissions, but like I say, I'm working through my list.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me too. I had you you had done Mystique on my X-Men Villains Jam. This was 2 New York City Comic Cons back. You were exhausted. You had a full commission load. I got to you early, but you were already full, and you said, "Do me a favor, come check with me tomorrow." I check with you tomorrow. The next day. You were full, and you were already exhausted, and you were just drawing. I mean, dude, the list was crazy, and you made sure to fit me in before the con was over. But besides fitting me in, you didn't phone it in. She looks fantastic, and I always appreciated that. So thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you, Phil. That's very nice of you to say.
Richard had said he's loved your New Mutants work, and Danny Moonstar and Cannibal and Sunspot, and you'll look for Rain Sinclair. So he loved the aesthetics of what you created. Keith wants to know, what's your favorite con to go to?
Well, again, I like different cons for different reasons. New York is not my favorite because of the bathroom situation and just getting around in general at the New York Con. I mean, it's a great show. There's so much there. People are great. You get people from all over the world coming there. There's a lot of good things about it, but it's not a comfortable convention to do as an artist. So some of these smaller shows, Baltimore is a great show. Heroes Con is a great show. There's several that are fun shows that I enjoy doing.
You like Terrificon, Mitch's show?
That's a terrific show. Yeah, I'd like to go there more often. That's a great show, and he's a great guy. There's several. It's hard to think of them off the top of my head, but generally the ones that are more comic oriented rather than about the costumes or the movies or toys or whatever.
Lost my camera.
As an artist, it's more fun for me as an artist if the show is more about the art.
Yeah, and Mitch, who runs that show, is a fan of the medium like me. So I really enjoy his show, and for me, it's the best. It's one of the best shows to go see the people you want to see at because you have the time. You know what I mean. You have the ability, and it's just more intimate, so we can enjoy that. Seeing you that way. So
yeah, he puts on a great show. Mitch is a great guy. It's one of my favorite shows for sure.
Until you go to mine, then you'll have a new favorite. And if you don't, I'll throw a little money on the side for you to say so. Randy said that he would happily help out at New York, and I can vouch for him. I don't know anything about this guy. I wouldn't trust him.
All right.
Actually, it might be too small, Randy. I'll try to blow it up. But Andy wanted to show that Avengers Jam that you drew on for us. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share that real quick. I love to show off art. Let me see if I can blow this up because this is the image size he sent me. Which one did he do? Let's see. It's a little blurry.
Captain America?
Yeah, Captain America. There you go. I don't know if that's big enough for you all to see. I'm sorry. It's what he sent me, but that's beautiful.
It's nice that he put me right in the center there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to show that real quick. Now, the next question I was going to ask you, Chris Markle actually got to it first, and I like the way Chris put it. Chris said, "Can you expound on your thoughts on the mess that was the New Mutants film, and how the heck did they misspell your name?" And I was going to bring that up too.
You know, when I first heard they were making a movie of the New Mutants, I was really excited. Chris and I both never figured they'd make a New Mutants movie. There's so many characters that I figured Marvel would go through before they'd ever get around to the New Mutants.
Right.
So I was really excited. And then when I heard they were going to make it into kind of a horror movie, I said, whoa, that's different.
Yeah.
Not what I would have done. But then again, it's intriguing and it's different. And I thought, well, at least it won't be the same old thing they've done over and over again in some of the other movies. It's a different approach. It'll bring in some horror fans, maybe a new crowd in addition to the superhero crowd. So it could be good. So I was still optimistic and looking forward to it. And then it just kept getting pushed back.
Yeah. I remember talking to you about this at Terrificon.
I mean, it was so depressing when they pushed it back, and then pushed it back again. And I just figured it was never going to come out. And then when it finally did come out, it got so many bad reviews in the critics, you know? And even before then, so many fans were saying they weren't even going to go see it for various reasons. And then I finally heard from someone who, I think Jerry Ordway, went to see it and told me that they misspelled my name in the credits at the end of the movie. And I said, isn't there somebody to check that stuff? I mean, how did they spell Bill Sienkiewicz and misspell Bob McLeod?
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's an even better point. They got Bill's name right.
Yeah, well, Bill was up there meeting the cast and the director. I mean, the director.
But you're the co-creator, for crying out loud.
Hey, you know,
I'm sorry.
what can he do?
I just remember talking to Terrificon. I'm like, this is BS, man.
Yeah, it was depressing. But then I found out, certainly not the first person that's happened to. Some major stars have had their names misspelled on film credits before. And it's, like anything else, there's human beings doing this. They make mistakes. Not that big a deal, really. I got over it. And then I heard that they they promised to fix my name in the movie when it was released to home, to the general public to watch on cable and whatever. And then someone sent me a copy of it, I don't know, a bootleg copy or whatever, but I got a copy of it to watch. And yes, they spelled my name right at the credits at the end, but instead of saying created by Chris Claremont and Bob McLeod, it says thank you to Chris Claremont, Bob McLeod, and Bill Sienkiewicz, which is great. But for the average person, what are they thanking us for? Did we bring lunch to the crew?
Right.
Nobody knows. So it would have been nice to say something besides just thanks. But again, they don't have to put my name on the film at all. There's nothing in the contract that says they have to give me credit. It's a different business from comics. It's a wholly different thing. So I don't really have a right to complain about it, which isn't going to stop me from complaining. I understand their side of it, and I'm sure they understand my side of it. For what it's worth, I watched the movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was an entertaining enough movie. I have issues with it, but I have issues with a lot of movies. I thought it was entertaining enough for what they tried to do.
I have to be honest, and it's no disrespect to Bill. I wasn't big on the Demon Bear saga. It's actually probably my least favorite plot line of the book, because I felt it kind of got away from what the book was supposed to be for me. And it's just my personal preference. So when they said it was gonna be a horror film, I knew right away this is Demon Bear. They're doing this. Um, I would have loved for them to just start from the beginning. To do it there. Just show these characters. I personally would have loved to have seen what you and Chris accomplished on it. And it's no disrespect to Bill, of course. Bill is great at what he does and everything, and his art. But just the writing, and no offense to Chris, I just didn't really care for the Demon Bear stuff. It's just me. I'm also not really much for a supernatural kind of thing, the mystic and stuff. I was never a big Doctor Strange fan, etc. Steve said, Mr. McLeod, with the opportunities to self-publish one's own IPs with Kickstarter, any want to self-publish some of your more do you have any wants to self-publish some of your cartoon creations? And if so, sign them up for 20 copies.
Again, not really. I'd rather be doing some painting right now. I have considered Kickstarter to do a self-publishing project, but I don't know.
You could even do a sketchbook and I would buy that thing up. What are you talking about?
Well, I have some sketchbooks for sale at cons. I just want to try something different right now. Even 10 years ago, I would have jumped all over the Kickstarter stuff and all these different things. But it's just at my age, I
27?
Pardon?
27, right?
Somewhere a little beyond that. My interests are elsewhere now.
I get it.
But I it's so great that people want that from me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Dennis Crisostomo is here. Hey, what's going on? He said it was great meeting you, Bob, during New York City Comic Con 2018. He's a great artist too, and he'll be a guest in a month or two.
Oh, nice.
In New Mutants, were any of the characters that that were developed? Did you ever relate to any of them? Did you relate to them on a character level more than others, or were they all just cool characters that you got to design?
Not really. I don't see myself in those characters. You try to put yourself into what you draw, so they have things about them that came from my mind, so I relate in that sense. But personality-wise, no. I enjoy drawing them, but I can't think of a comic character that I really relate to in that way.
Okay. By the way, an inker, Enrique Lopez, who I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is here. He said, "Hey guys," and if it's okay, he wanted to show off a Captain America head bust you did for him, and you had inked.
Sure.
I love showing your art, so if you don't mind. And this came out beautiful. I just love that. I mean, look at it. It's just so clean. I don't know. I'm for sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, but with art, I feel that most people can do a body and anatomy well enough, any professional. And I know that hands and faces are the toughest thing to draw, but faces, even like when you meet a person, that's what you're geared to look at first. So when I look at a piece of art, how do you draw the face? And when you're an inker, how do you ink the face? Because if you don't use the proper line weight on a mouth, you've changed the expression of that mouth.
Yeah.
One simple line weight. So that's why when I was telling you before the show, people like you and Ian Churchill amaze me, because you have a classic style mixed with that tighter pencil style of like the 90s to a sense, and you're inking, you capture the emotion and the expression in the face. You get the line weights exactly the way they need to be. And I just love that.
Well, thanks. The older you get, the more work you do. Basically, the better you become as an artist. The more you see your faults, and the more you see the things that you don't do that well. So when I look at my work, it's very hard for me to love it as much as the fans love it, because I just see everything wrong with it.
Well, I think that's every artist.
Yeah, it's
Your own worst critic.
It's very hard to draw something that you yourself are totally happy with, that you think, oh, that's really great, because all you do is say, oh, I could have done that part better, or I could have done that better, or it's just it's frustrating to be an artist.
Was there a piece, was there a book or even just a page or a panel that you really were most proud of, that you looked at and said, man, this is good?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I was looking at some of my stuff today, because I'm going through, I have Xeroxes of most of my job from my career, because early on I started making copies in case they got lost when I was mailing them into
Man,
Marvel.
I'd buy a Xerox from you.
And so I'm digitizing a lot of my Xerox copies and going back and look at some old work, and I see panels and, well, I did really well on that panel or that page. But so often the next page I'll say, oh my God, why did I do that so badly? Why didn't I do that on that? And so
well, it keeps you humble, right?
Yeah, right.
Joe Rubenstein had said earlier in regards to your back, how about working more vertical when you draw?
It's hard with my eyes to stay back here and look at it from 3 feet away. I usually am closer to 1 foot from what I'm drawing. I usually take my glasses off when I draw. I can see it, because otherwise I got to look down through my bifocals, to try to draw. So it's just easier to take my glasses off and to lean over than it is to stay vertical. I don't know how you'd work at a standing desk. I know there's some artists that do that. I couldn't do it.
I'm not sure what he was saying here, but he also said, I'd like to show off my Bob McLeod hard, but he's never given me any.
Joe has a hard time typing.
Joe, you know what you should have done is, when you, like how you started off with the lettering and editing the lettering, you should have helped Joe with the with the typing.
Joe, type that again. Do some copy editing.
Some proofreading. Do some proofreading. Randy said, I know Bob's not particularly known for his Hulk, but I'd love to get him on my Defenders Jam piece. Get him for your next show, Phil. What I will tell you is, obviously with COVID right now, it'll be a while before Bob can come out. But of course, I've spoken to Bob, and we will, hopefully have that happen at some point. And yes, he would kill that Hulk. Absolutely, he would do an amazing job.
I like drawing the Hulk. He's fun.
So Joe meant, I'd like to show off my Bob McLeod art, but he's never given me any.
What has Joe given me?
Oh, I'll tell you what. You're getting into painting again. Joe's been doing a lot of painting, and he's been doing some beautiful painting. So maybe you can collaborate or get the painting thing going on, and then you can switch art. You can switch paintings for each other. There you go.
Yeah, Joe's a very good painter, and I like his painting. And I've actually thought about asking him for a painting. I don't know what of mine he would want. He's never asked me for anything. But I would give Joe a piece, sure.
He said, I don't need this abuse. I can go home and abuse myself. I'm just, you know what, Joe? I got to get you for the ribbon you gave me when you were my guest. Yeah.
Joe and I started almost exactly the same time in this business. He was up at Continuity when I went up there and rented studio space at Continuity. He was, I think, 16, and I was 25 or 26 or whatever. But he actually started off much better than I did. He had been studying Stan Drake's originals and Neil's originals up there, I don't know, since he was even younger, and had such a beautiful line. And I was constantly trying to catch up to Joe as an inker. And it was great having him, because we would go back and forth, and he would critique what I had done, and I would critique what he had done. And I learned a lot that way. So it's always been as much of a character Joe can be. It's always been great to have him around.
Joe was at my first show, so he can tell you how I treat everybody and how good a show it is. So talk to Joe. By the way, Randy said that Joe had done the Thor that was on that jam you did Captain America for earlier. So as you can see, beautiful collaboration going on there.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Dean Morris, hey Dean, said Bob rocks. Missing seeing you and talking to you at all the shows. Googleplex Collectibles, say hi to Renee for me.
All right, hi Dean.
Randy said that already. Sorry, I went over that. Here we go. This is what I wanted to ask you. Richard said, with your painting aspirations, which medium, oils, acrylic, watercolors, which would you be using or prefer?
All three. I've painted a little bit in oils. I really like oils. Acrylics, I don't like as much because they dry darker than you apply them. And so it's confusing for me to use acrylics. I like watercolors. I want to do a painting with gouache. I've never used gouache. I want to experiment with that. Joe's trying to get me to do that. He's been giving me some painting advice, and I'm not sure. It depends what I'm painting, what medium I would use, but I'm not crazy about going into pastels, but I like oils and acrylics and watercolors.
Cool. Joe said that character seems the nicest way I've ever heard it referred to. So I finally get back to my questions. Now, you inked over Mike Zeck for Kraven's Last Hunt. I mean, did you ever expect that to be one of the iconic storylines in Spider-Man or in comics in general? And, how was it getting the feedback for that storyline? And how was it working with Mike?
Well, I always enjoyed working with Mike. He's another one that started out about the same time I did. I've inked him several times. In addition to the Kraven's Last Hunt, I did a bunch of G.I. Joe covers over Mike, and a couple Spider-Man stories.
I'm actually collecting your G.I. Joe stuff now.
Okay. There's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kraven's Last Hunt, when I saw the pencils for that, I don't remember how much he showed me in the beginning, maybe just the covers. He drew all 6 covers first and very tightly. His pencils were not generally that tight, but these covers he'd really put a lot of work into. And then he asked me to ink it. And first thing I thought of is, wow, that's going to be tough to ink because look at all that stuff in there. But sure, I was excited to do it because they were taking it on all 3 Spider-Man books, but they were tying it in. So it was going to be in all 3 titles, which hadn't been done before. So I knew it was something special, but there's no way, I don't think any of us, DeMatteis or Mike or me, I don't think any of us realized that anyone would still be talking about it, decades later.
Right. Yeah, it's an impactful story. I mean, it goes down in history as one of the best Spider-Man stories.
And it was supposed to be a Batman story,
Really?
Oh, you got to get DeMatteis to tell you all about it. That story went through a lot of changes before it ended up the way it is. It's a great story, and seriously, you should get him on your show to tell you about it.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to him this year. I want to get more writers on, so absolutely. Feel free to put in a good word.
I will. Yeah, he's a very good guy and interesting to talk to.
Maybe one day we'll get you and Joe on together, and you could just banter back and forth, and I can just watch.
All right. I would do that. He took it to DC, just very short version. He took it to DC and wanted to do it as a Batman storyline, and I think they had just done The Killing Joke, and they didn't want to do another story where Batman goes through that. So I think his timing was just off when he submitted it to DC. So then he took it to Marvel and had a different villain in mind originally. I forget the whole story, but it's a really good story. You should have him tell you.
And to be honest, though, I think things work out the way they're supposed to, and I think it probably works better with Spider-Man only because you would expect it out of a Batman story. This was kind of left field with Spider. I mean, granted, he's had tragedy and things like that in his storylines, but I don't know, it was very gritty, and it was nice to see it in that book.
Yeah, and I think Mark DeMatteis says that himself. He says stories tend to go where they're supposed to be and go the way they're supposed to go, and he thinks it was destined to be the way it ended up. So we're all happy with it.
Jolt and Joe just came out swinging. Writers are a cowardly and superstitious bunch. Them's fighting words. That's why I call him Jolt and Joe. He's got the gloves on. So is there any creator that you have not gotten to meet, or which is probably not likely at this point in your career, or maybe because they've passed away, you never got to meet them that you would have loved to?
When you start meeting your heroes, so often you can be disappointed. They might not be what you expected. One of my biggest hero, Mort Drucker, Mad Magazine, supposedly was the nicest person, and I never met him. I was too intimidated by him to try to. I wouldn't have known what to say to him. I just would have been tongue-tied. So I never tried to meet him, but I'm sure would have enjoyed meeting him. Who I think it'd be really interesting to have met would be Hal Foster from Prince Valiant.
Okay, nice.
I feel like he kind of taught our whole generation and the generation before me how to do comics, and it's just his talent is just mind blowing. So it would have been really interesting to talk to him possibly, but then again, maybe I wouldn't have liked him. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, once in a while I run into that. Like, I don't hero worship per se, but I can really. There are some people like yourself that I just really, really admire your work, and I guess a fanboy over more than I normally would. But I've met some people that it was disappointing walking away. Most people it's been great, but it's a shame when you walk away going, oh man, because then you look at their work and it just doesn't look the same anymore, and you can't help that.
Yeah, well, people are who they are. There's people in comics that are not nice people, just like any other profession.
Right.
There's movie stars that you hear about, and you say, "Oh my, I sure wish I didn't know that about them."
Right. Exactly.
I mean, but what are you going to do? I try to keep the artist separate from the art for that reason. I don't want to. Not be able to watch a John Wayne movie just because I wouldn't have liked John Wayne,
Right. I agree. The last question that I ask every guest that I have, and I'm gonna throw it at you. And please take your time, formulating an answer. But if you could go back in time to when you first started out, that 17, 19-year-old Bob McLeod, what advice would you give yourself with the knowledge and the experience and wisdom you have now?
I would have told myself to aim higher, reach higher goals. My whole goal going into this was just to get paid to draw. My dad was a construction worker, house builder. He could do so many things, but it was hard labor. And I didn't want to have to do physical labor for a job. I wanted somebody to pay me to draw. And so when I got to the point where people were paying me to draw, I said, well, I got it made. I enjoy going to work every day, and I look forward to it. I'm so lucky to have been able to do that. But like I say, I never learned how to paint, really. The painting I've done, I've just kind of fumbled through it. Intellectually, I know some things about painting, but you have to actually do painting to be any good at it.
Right.
So, I would like Joe's been doing. I would like to have studied painting. I would like to have done some animation, done storyboards. designed different things, done advertising, done a lot of other things than what I did, even though what I did was fine, and I'm very proud of a lot of the stuff I did. I'm happy with my career. I feel like I could have done more, and I just, you know, I was content doing what I was doing.
Okay. I did want to mention that you've won Inkwell Awards, Joe Sinnott Awards, and you are accomplished and you are recognized. I still think you don't get as much credit as you deserve personally as an inker or a penciler. But it has been a great pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for agreeing to come on. It's the best way I could have ended the year.
Thank you very much.
I really cannot wait to be able to see you across the table at a con again and get some of your artwork. You are truly a pleasure to speak with. I love looking at your work. As you could tell by all the love that you got in the chat room, we do appreciate your career and what you've done in your resume. And again, thanks for coming out and sharing with us. Chris wanted to say thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Steve said, thanks so much, Mr. McLeod, for all your fantastic contributions to the art form that I love. I look forward to meeting you on the con circuit, hopefully soon. All the best to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Steve. It was nice getting your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I should tell you what he privately messaged to me. I don't want to embarrass him, but it was very complimentary of you. And hey, you brought Joe Rubenstein out to the show too, so we get another celebrity in the chat. So that's always good.
Joe just likes to give me a hard time.
Well, it's funny because do you know the inker Norm Ratman?
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in a while, but he always likes to come on my show just to razzle me and heckle me. So yeah, I guess you know when people like you, right? When guys like guys, they always make fun of them and mess with them, right? Yeah. So that's where the respect is. Richard said, thanks, great meeting you over the years. And, let me just give you Randy's too. My kids are always amazed when we go to cons and I walk up to guys like Bob and talk to them like we're old friends, which I kind of feel like we are because I've been a fan for so long. So, again, Bob, thank you for coming out. I wish you and your family health and happiness and a wonderful new year holiday. And, of course, I hope that 2021 really, brings better circumstances for all of us. And thank you for helping us end the year on a good note.
Well, thank you very much. I was glad to come on and be here, and thank you for all your questions and making it enjoyable. Like you said, the time flew by, so I really had a good time. Thanks.
Joe says you owe him $10. And Steve gave me permission to show you that PM, so I will tell you about that PM. I'll send it to you.
It was a cheap date.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, and Keith said, Bob, thank you so much. So.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
Have a wonderful night, and you take care of yourself, okay? And thanks again.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
So that was the great Bob McLeod, and thank you for the great Joseph Rubenstein for joining in on the conversation and being in the chat. And thank you to all of the fans that come out and be a part of this. Without you, we'd have no show. It's the audience and the fan participation that really makes it special. I say this all the time. I don't have the most polished show, but I do think it's a quality show where it's just a raw sit down. We all get to talk. You all get your voices heard. You all get to talk to the people that you've admired over the years and direct correspondence. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I thank you all, especially the loyalists that always come out for every show and stay for every show. I do want to remind everybody, Chris Markle has his podcast on that is broadcast all over the place. So the Nerd Byword. So go check that out. The newest one is out now. You'll find it everything, Spotify, you name it. It's all over the place. So go support them. And just to everybody that comes out, thank you so much. And I really appreciate it. Steve, you're a mess. Steve said it was so freaking awesome. I feel like smoking a cigarette now. Thanks, Phil and Bob. Steve's great. So seriously, thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it, being part of this. This was a great way to end the year. Obviously, we have New Year's coming up. Now, New Year's Day on Friday, I have a cosplay slash comic creator on the show, Cara Nicole. She will be on at 10 p.m. And Saturday, I have a special episode. It's really cool. It's a guy named Jay Williams. I believe that's his name. Sorry, forgive me. He has a bat cave. I mean, literally, he has the statue head from the 66 Batman that you flip up, you hit the button, the bookcase opens, and he has a bat pole that goes down to his man cave. And I just thought this was so awesome that we're going to have him on the show. We're going to see the bat cave. He has a vast collection of CGC books. He has statues, you name it. And we're just going to comic geek out. It's going to be Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m., I believe. I'll double check that. And that's what's going on this week. So I just want to tell you, thanks for coming out. Go check out the shows. But first and foremost, have a happy new year. Be safe. Be responsible with drinking, please. Don't drink and drive. Think about the families out there, people with children. God forbid you have an accident. Also, cherish the ones you love. Be with them. Be happy. Be healthy. Eat merry. Have a good time. And know that things do get better. When, who the hell knows, but they do get better, okay? But it does start with each individual one of us. That's how it starts to get better. Having said that, thank you again. Thanks for the support. What do I always tell you? Be legendary and have fun storming the castle.